Okay, well, thank you very much. It's wonderful just to see so many people here and from really all around the world. I can just remember the ones from We've got Ireland, we've got India, we've got Italy, which is pretty good cross-section. There we go. And it's wonderful that we can get together and share stories for World Storytelling Day. Here in Singapore, for the past 2 days, we've actually had almost practically non-stop rain. It's very unusual. Normally when we get rain here, it can be very, very intense, but usually it's over very, very quickly. But we've just had, it's been non-stop and ridiculously cold. I mean, 22 degrees centigrade. Can you imagine? So cold. My wife said to me, you have to wear slippers today, dear, because it's the tile flooring is just so cold. But fortunately, the rain has stopped. The skies are clearing and we're all set to explore deep waters, which is our theme today. So we have a great program. I'm really pleased with the diversity that we've got. And we're going to start with one of our favorite feast members, Meenu, who is going to be joining us. Hi, Meenu, who I've got to know very well because she's a fellow improviser in Plotluck. So, but today is not an improvised story, is it, Meenu? No.
We'll see.
Okay. So why don't you tell everybody where it is that you're coming to us from?
Sorry?
Yeah, where you're coming to us from, which city?
Bengaluru, India.
Very good. Well, okay, I'm going to shut up and it's over to you.
All right. So here we go. Tandani nana nane nana nana nane tanani nana nane nane tandani. Happy World Storytelling Day, everyone. Belated wishes, everyone. Namaste, namaskara, vanakkam. My name is Meenu Sivaramakrishnan, and as I just said, I'm zooming in all the way from Bengaluru, India. So today I will be sharing with you a Zulu folktale, and taking inspiration from the Prop Swap series, I thought, why not try some of the techniques at least? So sort of 5 to 6 techniques is what I will be trying out today. Well, what are those techniques? You will find out. So here I go without further ado. Kwasuka Sukela. Once upon a time. Oh yes, only once upon a time. But a very, very, very long time back. So long time back, let's say, when the first man and woman walked on this earth? Yeah. So the woman was called Manzandaba and her husband was Zenzele. Now Manzandaba and Zenzele were leading a very happy and peaceful life with their many children. Everything was going on fine, and Zenzele, I must tell you, was very good with carving. Oh yes, he would pick old barks from tree trunks and then carve them into beautiful figures. Just like that. And he decorated his house with that. Isn't it beautiful? So that was what Zenzele was doing. Now it was one evening when the family and some of the villagers as well gathered around a huge fire. And then suddenly the children started screaming, Mama, Sifuna is in Daba! Sifuna is in Daba! Mama, we want stories! We want stories! Now Manzandaba was thinking. She thought and she thought and she thought because she knew no stories. She listened to the wind. She looked up at the trees. She listened even to the call of the birds. But then there were no stories that she knew. She looked at Zenzele. And Zenzele said, Manzandaba, I think you have to go. You have to go find those stories and bring them to our children. Do not worry, I will take care of them. Go and find them. And that's how began Manzandaba's journey for the search for stories. And so she walked, and she walked, and she walked through the forest. She decided that she will ask every creature that she would meet on the way. And yes, she met the first one. It was a trickster, Nagwacha, the hare. But still she asked him, Nagwacha, Nagwacha, do you have any stories? My people are hungry for them. Please, can you tell me?
Stories? I know hundreds of them. Actually, thousands. No. Millions of them. But I am in a hurry, so I have to go. Bye.
And off he went.
He is a liar. He does not know any stories,
thought Manzandaba. And she continued walking and walking and walking until she heard a sound. She looked up the baobab tree, and up there she saw the mother baboon sitting with her babies. Oh, Feeny, please, do you have any stories that I can take back to my children? Please. Now, Mother Baboon looked.
Stories? What stories? I do not know what you're talking about.
And she moved away to feed her babies. Poor Manzandaba. She did not know what to do, where to go, how to find stories, whom to ask. But she continued walking and walking and walking and walking until she reached near the sea. Well, there she saw the eagle, the wise old eagle. Nakwasi! Nakwasi! Oh, I'm so glad that I found you. Oh, Nakwasi, can you please tell me where I can find stories? My people are really hungry for them.
Oh, lady.
He was impressed that she called him wise.
Oh, lady. I know I'm wise. But though I'm wise, I need not know everything. But do not worry. I know someone who knows secret of the deep water. You heard me. So you wait right here. I will go and fetch him. I'm sure he'll be able to help you. And so off he went. And Manzandaba waited right there. 1 day, 2 days. She waited for quite a few days for the fish eagle to return. And then she heard the sound. Saubona! Nukosi Kazi! Saubona! Nukosi Kazi! I am back! And my friend has agreed. Yes, he has agreed, she said. He's agreed to take you to the place where there are stories.
And as he said that, out from the giant ocean came the giant sea turtle. Thank you, Ambu, she understood. Oh, yes, there you go.
Woza, Nukosi Kazi. Hop on, lady, and I shall take you down to the spirit world. Hold tight.
Oh, Manzandaba was so delighted, and immediately she hopped on, and down they went into the deep water. Wow, it was beautiful. They went straight to the spirit land as the sea turtle took her to the king. And the king asked,
What is it that you desire, lady from the spirit land? Sorry, not spirit land, from the dry land.
She bowed. Your Majesty, my people are hungry for stories. Please, do you have any?
Plenty of them. But what will you give us in exchange for the stories?
What is it that you want, Your Majesty? Picture of your people, picture of your land, because we will not be able to visit your land, you see. Yes, that can be done. Thank you so much. And immediately she jumped onto the turtle and off she went. back to the land. She ran back to her house, to her village, and the people were all eagerly waiting. She told them everything about her adventure and her success story. And Zenzele immediately said, I shall do it. I shall carve a wooden picture for them. And so he got on the work, and the work began. Exactly on the full moon day, she had told the sea turtle to return. The picture was ready. It was truly remarkable. She took the picture, hopped on to the sea turtle, and down she went into the deep water, back to the king, and handed over the picture. Your husband is indeed talented, he said, and gave her a necklace made of rare shells. This is for your husband. And for you and your people, dear lady, here we give you the gift of stories, he said, and handed over the most beautiful shell that Manzandaba had ever seen. She took it, as he said, whenever you want a story, hold it close to your ear, and you will hear your tale. Manzandaba was delighted. She bowed to him, thanked him, again hopped on to the sea turtle and went back, ran to her house as the people were waiting, her family were waiting. They already gathered around the fire, and the children started screaming, Mama, Sifuna, Izandaba, we want stories. Manzandaba took her shell, held it close to her ear, and began. Kwasuka Sukela, once upon a time. And that's how, my dear friends, stories came to be. Thank you.
Wow, 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 wow. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. And I had no idea that your story was about the start of all stories. What an appropriate choice. I hit the jackpot on that one. For those of you who you may have been puzzled when she mentioned the prop swap, this was a wonderful series that Meenu and Selena, who's also here along with Zip, who unfortunately can't join us tonight, they put together, and it featured people sharing different techniques for tell a story. And what did I spot? I saw there was the bare hand puppetry that Barry Stuart Mann did. There was, of course, you loved changing the backgrounds. That was one, wasn't it? And Dee had her music with the percussion, and Gail also using simple musical instruments to come in. Tangrams that Sui Yen and I had talked about. And there was also, yes, the cuss. So that was not something that we recommended that you actually pack it in. I think you deserve an extra prize there for actually demonstrating that so much, so concisely. Thanks, Meenu. Wonderful. And hat off to your pronunciation too. I have no idea if it was correct, but you said it with total confidence, and I totally believe that you can speak. Is it Zulu? Is it that you were? Yeah, wonderful.
It was Zulu. Yeah, I tried to use the Google Translator and tried to do as much justice as I could, but yeah.
We will have to see if we can get some more African members to join Feast, and hopefully we'll find someone who speaks Zulu, Swahili, or who knows. Thank you indeed. Now it's a great pleasure to invite Jim, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for some time, thanks to his wonderful Healing Stories initiative. I think it's the first time, Jim, that you're going to be telling on Feast.
Yes, it is.
Great to have you. And you're coming to us all the way from
upstate New York. Upstate New York, near the Great Forest.
Wow, very good. So not a story about the forest, but a story about water.
Deep waters.
Deep waters. Okay.
Deep waters.
And over to you, sir. And thank you for being here.
It's a real pleasure to be here and to see some of the folks I met in Marrakesh. And Dee, hello. In thinking about a story for today, I love to tell Jewish stories when I can. I don't tell them all the time, but they're a favorite of mine. And I have one about that matches the topic for today. It is a different kind of story than you've encountered before. And so I invite you to come along with me into this rather different world that is woven in this story. It's about two great rebbes who lived in the 18th century in Eastern Europe. At that time, rebbes were known by the cities that they served rather than by their names. So one was the Vorker Rebbe because he served Vorki, and the other was the Kutzker Rebbe because he served Kutz. And what's interesting about these two rebbes is they were the fastest of friends, despite the fact that they disagreed about everything. I mean, they had fundamental disagreements about everything, and yet they were the fastest of friends. In fact, they were such good friends that when the Vorker Rebbe had a son, he named him after the Kutzker Rebbe. And he named him Mendele. And so for years and years, this friendship went on. And as his son, as Mendele, grew older and older, he also became a rabbi. And came time for him to leave home. And he really didn't want to lose this wonderful connection he had with his father. So they decided they would start writing to each other every day. Now, mail took quite a while to get there, so they didn't wait for mail to arrive. They just would write every day. And every day, one would write to the other, and the other would write back. And this went on for years and years and years, until one day, as happens to us all, the Vorker Rebbe passed away. While Mendele, his son, went through the rituals of mourning and waited the 30 days for the most severe mourning to end. And he then started to notice that he hadn't received any letters from his father. He grew very concerned because his attachment to his father was so great that he figured he'd still get letters even after he'd passed away. So he went to the Kutzker Rebbe and he said, Rebbe, I'm concerned. I haven't heard from my father. It's been over a month, and what's going on? And the Kutzker Rebbe said, you know what? I'm a little worried too, because he and I wrote every day as well, and I haven't heard from him. I'll go investigate. Now, you have to understand that there's a lot of different Jewish ideas about what happens after you die. This comes from a time when there was no hell. There was only how far could you ascend in heaven. That was the only question. And if you were a really great person, you got a palace as you went up. All right. So the Kutzker Rebbe, who was a great Rebbe, starts an ascent looking for his friend. And he ascends higher and higher and higher till he gets to the palace of Rashi. Now, all you need to know about Rashi is that he commented on everything that was in the Torah. He was a tremendous individual. And in fact, he was so fantastic that when the Kutzker Rebbe got there, he forgot why he was going because he had a chance to study with Rashi. I mean, who wouldn't want to study with Rashi? So they studied for a while, and he remembered, oh, Rashi, I'm looking for my friend, the Volker Rebbe. Have you seen him? And Rashi said, oh, yes, I've seen him, but he ascended further. Well, the Kutzker Rebbe was pretty surprised, but he continued his ascent. He ascended and ascended and ascended. He got to the palace of Maimonides, a great, great Rebbe who was revered in both Islam and Judaism. And again, he forgot what he was there for, because he had the chance to study with Maimonides. So he studied there for, I don't know, day after day, until finally he remembered, and he said, Maimonides, have you seen my friend, the Volker Rebbe? He said, oh, yeah, he's quite a guy, but he ascended higher. Well, Kutzker Rebbe ascends again, and where does he get to now? But he gets to the palace of Moses. Moses. Well, he entirely forgot about what to do. I mean, here's the man who brought us the law. He's studying the law with Moses. And he finally remembers, oh, yeah, have you seen my friend, the Volker Rebbe? And he says, yeah, he's went higher than Moses. Well, he ascends further, and now he gets to the palace of Abraham, the father of all these wonderful, wonderful religions. I don't know how long he studied with him before he remembered. It was a long time, but finally he remembers. And he says, Abraham, 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 our father, have you seen my friend, the Volker Rebbe? And he knows there's no higher to go than Abraham. And Abraham says, yes, he was here, but he left. He left? Where did he go? Abraham said, he's quite a man. He says, he descended to earth. And if you want to find him, you'll have to go to the center of the darkest forest that there is on earth. It sounded very strange. So the Kotzker Rebbe started his descent, and he went down and down. It wasn't hard to find the biggest, darkest forest. There was a big blot on the earth, and he came down into the center of it, not knowing where he's going to find his friend. And he lands in this tiny little clearing, and all he knows is that the forest is dark, full of trees, and from a distance, there's a sound coming that sounds like people are weeping. Well, this doesn't seem right. So he heads in that direction, and the weeping gets louder. It starts to be moaning, and it's coming in rhythms, a moan after a moan after a moan. And he goes further and further in that direction, and it starts to lighten up a bit, but the moaning turns to wailing, and the pain in his heart is almost unbearable. And he finally emerges, and there before him is a great ocean. And with each crash of the waves, a wailing goes up that he can hardly bear. And he's so confused. What is his friend doing here? He looks down the beach, and there he is. There's the Volker Rebbe. And he hurries over to him, and he says, my friend, what is this place? And what are you doing here? And the Volker Rebbe says, this is the ocean of tears. These are all the tears that have been shed by people in pain, by people who've been separated, by people who have been mistreated. These are all those tears. And I told the Great One that I would not ascend any further until he dried up all these tears.
As you say, not a story, the like of which I've heard before. Very strong, very strong.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
A story for our times. Yes.
It's very deep.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Pretigaya, you now have to follow that. I think you're going to change the mood completely, aren't you?
I do hope so. I'm going to take my headphones off, so I won't be able to listen to what you're saying, Roger. So,
okay, off you go.
right. Just get this straight. Putul was a young girl who lived in a village, a fishing village by the river Ganga. Oh, she loved everything about the Ganga. The crystal clear water, the perfect concentric circles that would come on the surface when a pebble was dropped in, the way the fish played in them, the way the boats bobbed. She loved the reflection of the sun and especially the moon. She loved everything about the Ganga. One morning, when the little girl woke up, her feet felt wet. She touched water. She looked all around the house. Water. Ganga. Ganga had come right into her house. It had rained torrentially all night, and the river had swelled and flooded the entire village. The girl was excited. Puttu thought, wow, I'm gonna have the fishes playing right here with me. This is gonna be so much fun. She looked at her mother. But Ma, of course, looked completely devastated. Not a single piece of cloth was dry. No food left, no bedding left. Everything was soaking wet because of the floods. But the girl, oh, Putul was so excited. She was splishing and splashing in the water and playing with it. Ah, Ganga has come to my home. She was so excited. And she noticed something outside the window. She waddled closer and peered through it. Ma, dekho na. Ma, dolphins. A pair of dolphins were right outside her window. Grey, silvery skin. The two dolphins were playing so beautifully. Ma also wandered into the window and she peered outside. Although Ma had lived by the Ganga all her life, she had never chanced about dolphins. And she looked at them mesmerized, and Ma looked inside the house once again. And immediately she said, let's catch them. Your Baba will get a lot of money when he sells them in the market. Ma, Mama, how can you do that? Ma, these dolphins, they're playing so innocently right outside our house. They have come to our home. They are like guests, Ma. You tell us, don't you, that guests are like God? We can't possibly hurt them. But Ma was determined. You can't blame Ma, can you? Everything around her was devastated. And as a mother, all that she was worried about was how to get the next square meal. When Putul saw this determined look on her mother's face, she just waddled outside. She was determined to somehow save those dolphins. She went down and she said, shoo, shoo, go away, shoo, shoo, shoo. She tried to shoo those dolphins away. She did not listen to her ma calling out, Putul, don't go outside, it's dangerous there. She tried her best to shoo them away. But the dolphins, instead they came closer. And they started playing with her. They surrounded her and they were all around her. Putul was excited and she was also worried. So she was worried for their safety. I know what I'll do. She started playing with them and she started steering them away from the village, closer and closer to the river, away from the danger of the villagers, safety of the river. And as she swam and the dolphins played with her, they swam along with her. She was so excited. She was happy that her plan had worked. She was not bothered about the villagers or her mother calling out, it's dangerous, don't go there. The river is really swollen up. It didn't matter. She was enjoying her time with the dolphins. But suddenly, she felt being pulled and dragged. There was a certain force which was pulling her further and further inside the river. She was a strong swimmer. She tried to swim against that current, push it away, but it kept dragging her and pulling her and really sucking her up. There was a whirlpool which was trying to suck her in. Putul tried really hard. She swam and she moved her hands. She quickly tried to swim away from the current, but after a point, she was really feeling tired and exhausted. And then finally, she gave up. She stopped fighting the current. And she could feel herself being dragged further in. But she felt something more. There was something nudging her from underneath, pushing her away. Two things did she feel, dragging her away and further away from the strong currents. As I told you, she was quite exhausted herself. She let that nudging and that push happen. And just before giving up completely out of exhaustion, she heard the villagers, Putul, we are here! We are here, dear! And she noticed those two dolphins going away after rescuing her. When she regained her strength, she told all the villagers about how those two dolphins saved her life that day. And she made them promise that they would never, ever hurt them, never try to catch them or even sell them. And then, once the river settled, she would often go by the Ganga, sit and wait and watch and look for her dolphins, for her friends to come along and play with her someday. যদি তোর দক্ষিণে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে যদি তোর দক্ষিণে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো রে তবে একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো রে যদি তোর দক্ষিণে কেউ না আসে তবে This was a story called Putul and the Dolphins, which is published by Tulika, and it's written by Marian Karim Elawan. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that one. And thank you also for, now you can hear me, good, good, good. Thank you for getting permission to tell that story. What is the refrain? Ekla Chloe or something?
Ekla chalo means walk on alone. So the song actually says, if no one answers your call, go and fight alone, my friend. Ekla chalo, walk alone.
Very good. It's one I want to take for definitely for Plot Luck for our improv. Pretigaya is another wonderful improviser. So we do like to kind of work in some music now and again, don't we, into our improv. So great story. Thank you very much. Lovely, lovely. So now, as we were saying before we started, today's been a bit of a reunion. It's good to see some people that we haven't seen for a while. And Elena from Italy, it's so lovely to have you back. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roger. I'm very happy because I am in one of my most favorite ever storytelling group, Feast. So
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for welcoming me, and happy World Storytelling Day to everybody.
Absolutely. Tell us, where are you in Italy? Let people know.
So I do live in Florence, but as a few among you knows, I am from Sicily. And so this is the travel we will be doing together through the story that I have chosen to share with you for going dive into deep water. Just a very quick introduction. This, of course, is a Sicilian legend that goes into the deep water of my childhood. According to me, it takes the different meaning of deep water, but you will let me know later. So struggle, mystery, transformation. And I really like it because as most of the legend, there is not just one version, right?
Of course.
And it is the one that has been donated to me by many Sicilian women, starting from my grandmother, my school teacher. So every Sicilian child will know about it. So this is the way I like to share with you.
We'd love to hear it. Over to you.
So you already imagine Sicily is this island triangular shaped in the middle of the Mediterranean. And if you close your eyes, maybe you can also smell the citrus fruit smell that expand on this island. And then its east coast is black as black is the lava coming out of Vulcano Etna, while the west coast is made of white rock. So precisely among those black rock, there are several fishermen villages, and in one of those, there is a young and handsome man who lives with its fisherman family. Its name is Nicola, but everybody knows him as Cola. Cola surely is a fisherman, as is his father, his grandfather, his grand-grandfather, but it is also a passionate lover of the sea. He can swim from day to night, from night and day. And this is the story of his daily life. After having helped the family, Cola dives into deep water and swims until he gets close to the sunset, and there on the shore, Cola's mother stands and calls him, Cola, 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 bisogna tornare a casa, it's time to come back home. You are not a fish, non sei mica un pesce. And these stories goes every day, as I said before. But one of these days, a tempest starts, and Cola's mother is at home, and through the windows looks at the horizon. The sea is very rough, and she cannot see Cola. So she puts a thick coat on her head, she opens the doors, and she runs to the small fishermen village's harbor. And from there, again under the rain, she starts searching for her son. And Cola, it's raining, it's dangerous, basta. But nothing. She can see him, she can hear him. And so they're standing, all wet, stares at the sky and then stares at the sea, so that you may become a fish. And she screams as strong as she can. And Cola is still there among the waves in the tempest. And he starts feeling that something is changing. He can breathe much better than before now, and he can swim as better than before. He can go through these very rough waves, and he feels that his legs are now a fishtail with the scales. And from that moment, Cola became Cola Pesce, Nick the fish, half man, half fish. So now he can go even deeper into the water. He can find treasure that have been hidden in the sands among the rocks, and he can help sailors and fishermen to navigate the sea, giving them weather forecasts. And he's so prodigious that his story one day gets to the ears of the Emperor of Sicily, Federico II di Svevia. How is that possible that a man, no, actually half a man, half fish, has become even more famous than the emperor? He said once to his counselor, I want to meet this Cola Pesce. And when an emperor orders, there is always someone listening to him. So the Royal Navy went and looked for Cola Pesce, and Cola Pesce so one day gets to the shore closest to the Emperor Castle, and finally they met. I have a feeling that you are a good swimmer. I want to test this. So the king took a very heavy silver cup and threw it into the sea. And Cola Pesce, after a few minutes, brought it back. My lord? Oh, okay, I can see you can swim, as many people have told me, but it's not enough. I want to verify whether you are loyal to my crown. And saying so, the king, the emperor, throws the crown as much as far away he can. And Cola Pesce dived into the water, and after a couple of hours, he was back. My lord? So, yeah, loyal, you are loyal, but now I want to verify how brave you are. And saying he takes off his rings, and again, he throws it as far away as he can. And people that are now on the harbor surrounding the emperor start saying, it's a mission impossible. The ring is so small that he's going to go quickly deep into the water and Colapesce will not find it. But Colapesce dives into the water, and 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and then someone from the coast said, I can see some bubble. There is a ring, and there is the hands and the arm of Colapesce. And so Colapesce is again in front of the emperor with his royal ring. Oh, yeah, so surely you are brave. Why? Why you have spent so much time? You see, my lord, because to go as deep as the ring was, I have to really swim the deepest way that I ever done so. And while I was doing so, I noticed that Sicily, your kingdom, is holding on 3 columns. One is perfect, one is a little bit cheap, but the third one is almost completely ruined by the lava that comes down from the depth of Volcano Etna. Of course, the emperor was not happy about that. So, you are saying that my kingdom is unstable? I want a proof of that. I want you to bring me a piece of that fire. And Colapesce looked at the king and said, no, this time I cannot go. It's going to be dangerous for me. So you are saying that a man, half a fish, as brave and loyal as you are, cannot follow an order by the emperor? My lord, I will do so then, but I need a wooden stake. I will dive into the water and I will prove what is happening in the deep water of Sicily. And so Colapesce dived again and again. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and then after 7 days, someone from the harbor saw a wooden stick floating. It was Colapesce's stick, but it was burned. They brought it to the king, to the emperor Federico II di Svevia, and there he understood. He understood what he had happened and what the cause of his order to Colapesce. But for us Sicilian, actually, Colapesce is still there. We are convinced that he decided to stay into the deep water to continue supporting Sicily, replacing the 3rd columns. And we also believe that in those days where we feel earthquakes in the east coast of the island, from the city of Messina to the city of Catania, it's because it's changing shoulder from left to right, from right to left. And this is the legend of Colapesce, Nick the fish, half man, half fish.
I love it. What a great story. What a great story, Colapesce. And I just love the way you tell it, Elena. There's a cadence about you, your rhythm, and beautiful story. And
thank you, Roger. Is this the Sicilian cadence?
Yes. Okay. It's a very, very beautiful. And I love the idea of shifting from one shoulder to the next.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So now, can I switch to say hello to Kiran, who's had a very busy day already? I think you've been involved with some storytelling already today, Kiran.
Oh, yes. It's also Harmony Week in Australia. So between World Storytelling Day Zoom at night, and it is pretty late for me, and Harmony Day stories in the daytime, I'm rather shattered. And I will, with apologies to people who have heard this story just a few hours ago and a couple of Sundays ago as I was practicing this for a fun story, I'm going to take you on a metaphorical journey of deep water. So no seas involved. And Ansu, because I see that you're here from Korea, I had 2 Korean stories, so I will tell this one. In old Korea, young men, young boys would attend special schools to be schooled in the Confucian classics. They learned to read, to write using brush and ink, and to memorize. Now, the schools were held by very strict teachers. And this is a story of what happened in one such school, where the teacher was known for severe punishments for any slight misdemeanor. It was always quiet when the teacher gave the order and the boys did their memorizing or writing or reading. And the boys noticed that their teacher loved to open a drawer and take something out from his basket and put it in his mouth. He loved to snack. And the teacher noticed this and he said, "This is only for adult consumption. It is not meant for young boys, because if you eat this, you will be poisoned." Well, the boys listened, and most of them believed him. But there came a day when the teacher had to step out for a rather long meeting with the official. And boys will be boys. And one of them crept to the teacher's drawer, and the others were a little aghast. "What are you doing?" He pulled the drawer. Then he showed all the others what the teacher had kept. "It's just dried persimmon. Surely it's safe for us to eat." "No, no, no, you must not." "Oh, come on, don't be such a scaredy cat." And so they bit off pieces, and one by one by one, they finished the whole lot. And then one of them said, "Where's deep water now? What will happen when teacher comes back?" But in the class, there's always one smart one, and he said, "Don't worry, I'll get us out of trouble." And he proceeded to smash the teacher's favorite inkstand, and all black ink splattered all over the teacher's chair and the table and his cushion. And the boys were even more horrified. Just listen to me. Pretend to be on the floor, clutching your stomachs in pain, and I will take care of the rest when teacher comes back. And sure enough, when the teacher came back, he looked at the mess, the ink splattered all over the boys, right on the floor, arms clutched to their tummies. What is going on here? That one boy, that smart boy, he says, "Oh, well, we accidentally smashed your inkstand, and then we didn't know what to do. And we thought we remembered what you said about the food that would poison us. So we thought that the only thing we could do was poison ourselves." Well, the teacher, all he said was, "You will be all right." And he walked out of the door and with a little smile said, "Boys will be boys." Thank you.
We certainly will, won't we? Yes, yes. Oh my goodness me. Good story, good story. Yeah, certainly. The terrible lies that teachers tell, isn't it? Really? Okay, but that could be another subject for another World Storytelling Day, I think. Okay. You enjoyed that, didn't you, Kiran? Yes. Okay.
I did. Yeah.
It wouldn't work with girls, would it? Wouldn't be the same story at all.
No, it's the boys, the sons of the aristocrats. You know, they had to study the Confucian classics.
Absolutely.
Girls had to be at home.
Yes. Confucian or Confucian, I don't know. Thanks very much, Kiran. And now it's a great pleasure for us to welcome Anna, I think making your debut here on Feast. Is that right?
That's correct.
Well, thank you very much. And also coming, we have very fond connections with our Canadian members who have been very active, and Selena's here today too. So thank you very much for joining us. It must be very early in the day for you. So thank you for, it was when we started, it was like 7+, wasn't it, this morning? So thank you. And, but is your story from Canada? No.
No, my story is actually from the Channel Islands, which are the islands between France and England.
They are indeed, yes, yes. So I'm going to hand it over to you now to tell us your story. Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph Rowland was a fisherman, a man with a deep love of the sea. And after a day's work, he often walked along the shore, smoking his pipe, looking out at the waves, watching the sunset over the water. One day, as he made his way along the shore, he saw a young woman sitting in a tide pool. She wasn't wearing anything, and he turned away embarrassed because he thought she was taking a bath. And, well, he was embarrassed because he had caught her in such a private moment. But she called out to him and said, "Wait, please, don't go. I need your help. I stayed too long and the tide went out. Can you help me back into the sea?" And as she spoke, he saw the glimmer of scales and a large tail fin, and he was taken aback. Oh, you're a mermaid. I've heard of you. Mermaids lure men into the sea so that they can drown them. The mermaid didn't protest, but her eyes filled with tears. "If you leave me here, I will die." Now, Joseph was a good man, a kind man, and the mermaid was beautiful, too beautiful a creature to be lost to the world. So he waded into the pool and he picked her up in his arms and he carried her out to the sea all the way past the third wave. And there, she slipped from his arms like a codling and disappeared, only to reappear a moment later. "Thank you," she said. "If you stay here, if you wait, my father will come and bring you a reward. My father is the king of the sea people, and he has sea caves filled with treasures." No, said Joseph. He didn't want a reward. What he wanted was, "I have no need of a reward," he finally said. I'm happy to have helped." "Then take this," she said, and she pulled from her hair an amber comb and handed it to him. "If there is ever a time that you are in need, wave the comb through the water 3 times and I will come." And then she was gone. Her voice was as sweet as honey, and her words were like seeds in his brain, and they took root. And instead of forgetting her features seemed to grow brighter in his brain. Her hair, her eyes, her mouth. And at night, she swam through his dreams like Oh, like an image that he couldn't forget. Day after day, he walked along the shore and he looked out at the waves, hoping for some sign of her. He stopped at each of the tide pools, but there was no sight of her. And finally, annoyed at his obsession, he was angry. So, this, he said to himself, this is how you mean to lure me to my death? Well, I won't give you the chance. And he took his boat and hauled it up to the sand. And instead of staying as a fisherman, he put a hill between himself and the sea, and he went to an inland farm. Months passed. And then one day, there was a storm. The wind howled and the rain came pouring down. It pounded on Joseph's roof like 1,000 galloping horses. And he thought about his friends down by the shore, and he worried about them. And he was right to worry, because the sea roiled in such a frenzy that it drove a ship right into the rocks. And the fisher folk, they heard the crash and they heard the cries of the seamen, and they hurried down to the shore only to find that their own boats were overturned and broken to pieces. Those poor men, they said, nothing can help them now. But just then, Joseph Rowland came running along the shore. Help me launch my boat, he shouted. And it wasn't long before he was making his way to the wreck. And beside him, the mermaid appeared. You summoned me with my comb, she said. Yes, and you came. Can you help me save these men? And she did. As carefully and as tenderly as she could, she carried each man to Joseph's boat. And he helped the men inside, and they flopped into the bottom of his boat like wet fish. And when all the men had been rescued, Joseph made his way back. And swimming beside him, her hair filled with sea foam like flowers. And she called out to him, she said, I thought you had forgotten me. And he said, I thought your kind was wicked. I thought I couldn't believe you, but you came and you helped. It wasn't long before Joseph made his way to the shore, and the people gathered round and helped the seamen out and up to safety. And someone finally remembered to turn, and they looked back, and there was Joseph pushing his boat back into the waves. Had he seen another man in trouble? Joseph, they called, don't go. You've done enough. But Joseph kept going, all the way past the third wave. And there, the mermaid waited for him. And in her hair was the amber comb. And in her hand was the key to the sea kingdom.
Thank you. Thank you. What a beautiful story.
It is. I like it because, first of all, it's a love story, and who doesn't like a love story? But it's also a story about how we often misunderstand each other if people are different. And really, if we get to know each other, how much the same we really are.
Sure. I love the line there, at night she swam through his dreams. I thought that was a fabulous line. And I will come back to that because I want to, before we finish tonight, I want to tell people about our learning capsule, which is coming up next Thursday, which is all about racy love stories or racy tales. And I thought you kind of could have veered that there, but you kept it very PG tonight. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
I want to share a story. I'm not someone who usually tells personal stories, but it just so happens that I feel I've got one that does relate to this, okay? And funnily enough, also relates to what Kiran was saying earlier, because mine is also a story about school, okay? So the deep is often a scary place, isn't it? And this is appropriately a horror story, sort of. But something surprising does sort of bob to the surface at the end. So this September marks 50 years since I first started teaching. And back in May 1975, I was interviewed and hired by the diminutive and very dynamic head of drama at the Dean's School in Southend in England. It's very ordinary, government comprehensive school. And I was to join her to form a drama department as the school was expanding. However, by the time that I arrived in September of that year, two things had happened. Okay. First of all, she had resigned suddenly and unexpectedly at the last minute, so they were unable to replace her. So I became the de facto head of department. I mean, talk about sink or swim. There was I trying to cope with having to actually plan and teach my own lessons, but I also had to devise lessons for other less experienced staff than me. But what really plunged me into the deep end was in May of that year, the government, looking at the terrible state of the British economy, seeing there were so few jobs, decided that they would raise the school leaving age from 15 to 16, creating what were called the ROSLA, raising of school leaving age kids. Now, these were the non-academic kids who had all but been classified as factory fodder, the kids who hated school, and in May thought, yay, we've only got 1 more month. There'll be no more schools, boring homework, discipline, uniforms. And then in June, we're told, no, you're coming back in September for another year to suffer and study. Well, by September, the school had timetabled the ROSLA kids, English, math, science, some art and PE, but they found that there were 2 double periods, first thing on Monday morning and last thing on Friday, and they had to fill them. And the deputy head thought, Jenkins, yes, drama, no reading, no writing. Great for kids, ROSLA kids. So he looked at my timetable, but he saw that I only had 1 double period left. So he split it, and he made me do the first 35 minutes on Monday and the last 35 minutes on Friday. And the 35 minutes after me on Monday and before me on Friday, I was free and the kids were free, and they had to do supervised silent study, which was torture for them and also horrible for the poor teacher who had to supervise them. Well, the kids said, sir, this is crazy. Why don't we come and do a double period on Monday morning, and then we can bunk off early on Friday, or we'll do double session on Friday and we can come in late on Monday. And my naivety, as I'm just starting, I thought that was great because, as a teacher, I thought I could actually get something done in 70 minutes, but in 35 minutes, by the time I got settled, the period was gone. But the school said no. So I was stuck with these ROSLA kids, and they made my life hell. Really, I was 6, at most 7 years older than them. And I was totally ill-equipped by my middle-class life, my very strict academic kind of school upbringing, the textbook training that I'd been given, to be able to help them, to help these kids who'd been almost ostracized by the school system. So I was floundering in very deep water. In fact, I felt it was like deep, very brown and very smelly. However, just like in Kiran's class, there was one boy, very tall, actually a bit taller than me, with a shock of kind of a quiff of teddy boy hair that he swept back. Paul Cockgrove. And one day he came up to me on the Friday afternoon. He said, "Sir," he said, "can't we do something that's a bit interesting?" I said, "What do you mean interesting?" He said, "Well, this drama, improvising, it's really boring. Can't we do some horror?" Well, horror was his thing, and it was very popular as a genre in England. From the 1950s to the 1950s, there was a 1970s, there was this local film company, Hammer Horror, that made a whole series of very popular horror movies. So he gave me a script that he himself had written. Yeah, I took it home, I read it. It was all about ghosts and ghouls in the graveyard, lots of blood. And it gave me an idea, because the school had a video camera. Now, and you're probably thinking, you know, the little kind of handheld things that we can hold here now and make it very easy, yeah, to film. No, 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 no. Back in the 1970s, a video camera was a big, heavy thing. You couldn't possibly handhold it. It was on a metal tripod, on wheels, a dolly, and it was connected by cables to a video recorder, which was another massive machine, okay? And the tape itself was like, you know, this thick, yeah, and it kind of rolled along. Da, 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 da. I had no idea how you would possibly edit it, because there weren't computers in those days, let alone video editing software. But that Monday morning, I went in and I started to bring out the camera, and the kids were interested as I'm trying to connect this up to the screen recorder. And of course, before we had even started filming, the bell, ding, ling, 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 35 minutes was up, and they were meant to go to supervised silent study. Well, the chance of looking at themselves on video was surely far more interesting, so they didn't. They stayed. And before the session ended, yes, I managed to film most of them kind of walking on, going, making funny faces, doing that sort of thing. But there was no time for us to actually watch. So on the Friday afternoon, I go there early, and I said to Paul, "Why don't you come in and help me set up the recorder and the TV?" And when Paul turned up, he didn't just come by himself. No, he brought the other lads, because, as I say, who wants to do supervised silent study, right? It was better just to sit there and watch. And finally, we got to see what they had recorded, and they kind of enjoyed it. It was fun seeing themselves being silly. And that's when I, with Paul's help, made the pitch that we should make a movie of his script. Well, the kids weren't exactly enthusiastic, but Paul kind of said, "We're going to do this, right?" And the kids said, "Okay." So we tried, but we very quickly realized that in 70 minutes, the time it took up to set the camera, that we weren't ever going to be able to realistically shoot his film. And that's when Paul said, "Yeah, sir, next week is half term, isn't it? It's a holiday. Why don't we come in? Because, like, there'll be nobody else in school. We'll be able to shoot. Like, we could do a scene on the stairs. That would be good for a death. And what about the toilets? They're pretty creepy, aren't they?" And I said, "Really? Will they come in?" And Paul looked at the other kids and said, "We're going to do this, right?" And the kids said, "Okay." So there we were on that Monday morning, right? We're probably the only people in school. The girls were really excited because we'd got some white makeup, and they were kind of black stitches and lots of red around there. We found some fake fangs. Got a couple of boys up on the lighting gallery setting up some spotlights, because the video camera required so much light. Yeah, with some leaf breakups to make it kind of spooky. Okay. And we started doing the opening scene. I'd got about 8 boys to be in the graveyard, and they would kind of come up to the camera, and do all this. And there was lots of screaming and groaning and moaning. And suddenly, the doors of the drama studio were hauled open. Now, I need to explain that my drama studio, stupidly, inappropriately, I don't know what the architect was thinking, was situated right next to the main lobby, the foyer, to the school. So every so often, practically once a week, the headmaster, Mr. Gordon W. Taylor, would come to me and he'd say, "Jenkins, I've got the school inspector coming tomorrow," or it would be the head of the PTA, or the chair of the board of governors, and he'd say, "Could you please do something where the children aren't too loud and making a disturbance? Perhaps they could be owls roosting." Really, owls roosting. So there we were, in the midst of our ghost apocalypse, when suddenly the door is thrown open, and standing there, backlit by the light from the hall, is Gordon W. Taylor, and he says, "What the hell is going on here?" And he switched on the lights, and of course, suddenly we've got all this fluorescent light shining down, and to his horror, he sees all the terrible miscreants, the troublemakers, the boys who hang out by the toilets smoking, those who are repeatedly and regularly being sent up to his office by the staff, who can't cope with these kids' defiance, disobedience, and downright disrespectful disinterest in their subject. And there they are, in his school, in holidays, with no reason for being there. So, of course, I stepped out from behind the camera and said, "Don't worry, sir, we're actually making a movie with this new school video camera. And it's a video made by one of the boys, the story by Paul Cockgrove." Well, do you think that when Mr. Taylor heard that, do you think his heart began to swell with pride that here, in his school, that these children who everybody thought had no future, who were uneducatable, that here they were in the school, in their holiday time, voluntarily wanting to work together collaboratively and creatively? And as he looked across this young, probationary, and probably quite inept drama teacher, who all he had going for him was enthusiasm, and yet who had managed to get these kids to come in of their own volition, did he have a tear well up in his eye? Not bloody likely. He glared at me and he said, "Well, Jenkins, as soon as you've finished with this business in here, I want you to get these kids off the site within 10 minutes, and you'd better make sure that none of them damage or break anything on the way out." Slam. Seriously. I think at that moment, the kids realized that there was nothing they could do that would change anything. Sadly, we never did complete Paul's film. But the only good thing that came out of it was that my relationship with those kids changed. And while they were never easy to teach, I never felt out of my depth with them again. But as I said, I promised you a surprise at the end. That was 50 years ago, and almost 40 years ago almost 40 years later, in 2014, I was looking at some stories on the BBC feed, and there was a story, an amazing story, about two films that had been found, black and white films, that had been found in canisters that had been thrown away in a dumpster. And when the man who found it opened them up and he looked at it, he saw that they were two show reels filmed by Peter Sellers, who back in 1956, when he made them, was like still only a radio voice actor. He was trying to break into TV and film, and of course went on, got his Oscars for Dr. Strangelove, being there. Well, when this man found the canisters, he brought them to the director of his local film festival in Southend. And this director, because the film festival is actually a horror film festival, and the director of this film festival, he himself had made a horror film and had managed to persuade a star from Hammer Horrors of the 1960s to come out of retirement and star in his film. And you've guessed it, the director was my ex-student, Paul Cockgrove. True story. So thank you very much. Thank you. So we really enjoyed, I hope you've enjoyed this evening's sessions, the variety. I just love it when we have these story swaps and we just have so many different voices, different ways of telling stories, different rhythms, different accents, which is so important, different kinds of English that people are sharing their stories. We have another wonderful story swap that is coming up next month on the 12th of April, unusually on a Saturday at 2 o'clock Singapore time, because we are celebrating Dr. Margaret Reed MacDonald, who is a teller who is very dear to many of us here. She has been and offered so many workshops, performed in so many festivals, a strong supporter of feast from the very, very, very beginning in 2018. I think the invitation to anybody who wants to tell has gone out. If you haven't received it already, you could certainly go on the website to register, and you would see a link there if you wanted to tell, so that you could answer some questions about. We do want you to try and tell one of Margaret's stories. Just beware that obviously, as we've Elena was saying, there are different variations of stories, different versions, and if you are going to tell a story, do try and make sure that it is Margaret's version of the story. That's free, and we'd love to see you there. I'm sure that's going to be a really fun occasion. But as I mentioned, next week on the 27th, we have a learning capsule by the wonderful Lillian Rodriguez-Pang from Australia, which she's called Unleash the Spice. And you are encouraged, if you have a story that has a spicy element to it, if you've got someone swimming naked, swimming through your dreams, then this would be an ideal opportunity for you to come up. And I don't know what the leashing has to do with it, whether this is part of the raciness or not. But come along, and Rachel will give you some tips on how perhaps you can up the racy quality to your story. I think that's going to be a very fun session indeed.
So Lily did have something to say. She said that she would be able to help you to make any story racy. So that's a challenge. So come with a story to work on, and we will get your hearts and everything else racing.
I've mentioned Plotluck a couple of times. I think it was last year, and we started telling the story of the gingerbread man. And the way that we tell it is that one person will start the story in a particular style, and then as each person, there were maybe 5 or 6 of us who were telling the story, we each come in and we tell it in a different way. Sometimes it's quite musical, but I do remember that I speaking of racy, the encounter between the gingerbread man and the fox, and what the woman who had baked the gingerbread man, that became very fruity, as it were. You can find that if you go on our website to the Plotluck page. You will see there in the Plotluck larder. I think we've got it there because we did find it quite fun. Despite its...
I'd like to add here, Roger, I was there in that session.
Yes, you were.
That gingerbread man was way too hot to handle.
So thank you very much, everybody. Can we give a big hand to our tellers for their wonderful selection, the diversity of stories, and what they've made us to do. I think it has been a very genuine reflection of the power of storytelling and why we have a storytelling day, but also just looking at you here and listening to you, how it's brought us together from all around the world. It's been wonderful to see a lot of faces. Ansuk's wonderful to see you. Haven't seen you for ages also, okay, and Jongye as well. So thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you again.